Well, I'm excited to welcome into the show my brother, Mr. Tyler Cauble. What's up, man?
Matty, excited to see you, man. It's been a long journey getting here. We met first, back in 2017 in Whistler, Canada?
Yeah, that is where we met. And dude, seeing your journey has been so fun to watch. One, it's been inspiring for me because you really made the transition into commercial well before I did. But seeing what you have done and all the deals that you've been in and out of, and I mean, it's been really cool to see. And then obviously, you know, your meteoric rise as a commercial real estate investor, influencer, and just the impact you've had on that space. Because there's really not a lot of educators in that space doing anything good, let alone doing it at a really high level. So I'm excited for our conversation today, brother. But most importantly, what's going on with you? How are you doing?
Oh man. Yeah. I'm excited to dive into this. I'm good. Just been crazy busy. It's one of those times where I feel like I'm saying I'm busy, but I'm not productive. It's just that time of the market, which is, sometimes good, sometimes bad. At least we've got things to do, but yeah, it's exciting. We're working on 3 deals right now that we're hopefully going to be raising some capital for at some point.
Cool.
Which we didn't buy anything at all last year. And I know I was not alone on that one. 2023 was the lost year in commercial real estate.
It was challenging for a lot of people. I remember getting so frustrated. I traded out of one of my hotels into the stars aligned with how I came across this medical office building and ended up getting it. But I remember I was so frustrated, like looking at what it felt like 5-10 times as many deals as I normally do to find anything that was remotely close to my buy box. And I just remember my one of my mentors saying, hey, sometimes doing no deal is much better than doing a bad deal. And I saw a bunch of people kind of forced doing deals last year that are regretting it now.
Oh, so that's one of the biggest things that I pitch to my investors. Like my LPs, whenever we're onboarding them, is like, I am never going to put us into a deal because I need to make a fee. I make the majority of my income off of running my commercial real estate brokerage. So we're not going to buy deals just to buy deals. And you see a lot of these guys that invested with them in 21, 22, 23. I had a conversation with one of my LPs last week. He was like, dude, it's brutal. We're having capital calls left and right because these guys closed on deals that they never should have just because they needed to keep their lights on.
Yeah.
It's brutal.
Yeah. And I know we'll be talking a lot about what's going on in the market and, kind of how you're navigating it, how others are navigating it, where the opportunities are. We got a lot of cool stuff on the conversation docket here today. But for those that don't know about you and kind of your investing journey and the evolution of, what we've seen today, when and where did you get started in commercial real estate, and what was it that led you into this space?
Yeah, man. Well, it started with a small $1 million loan from my family. No, I wish. It'd be really great if I had some money starting off in commercial real estate, that's for sure. But I dropped out of college back in 2012 and honestly just got a job offer to get into commercial real estate. I had done sales the summer that I graduated high school. I sold Cutco knives, which was the best sales training I could have ever gotten. Hands down. So grateful that I went through that opportunity because it made me realize like, oh man, I can sit down with people and I can help them find what's best for them. Yeah. That's what sales is, right? I feel like a lot of people get scared of sales. It's not sitting down, selling somebody something. It's helping them figure out what's the best fit for them. So did that. And after I dropped out of college, this boutique developer here in Nashville heard that I was back in town, reached out, offered me a job to come be the in-house leasing agent for him. And I said, I have no idea what that does. He's like, well, you find Chipotle and you put them in a shopping center. It's like, oh, cool. Okay, let's do it. So he paid for me to get my real estate license. I got to work and started knocking on doors and cold calling and trying to figure out what in the world I'm doing because, there was no training on commercial real estate. There were like 2 books on Amazon. There were no podcasts or YouTube channels back then. And there was nobody really in the shop to mentor me because he was a developer. He's like, he's building. I mean, by the time I left, he was building 1,000 townhomes. So he's not going to take his time to show me like, hey, here's how you do a 2,000 square foot lease, buddy.
Yeah.
So I kind of had to, figure that all out on my own. And then, 15, put together my first development deal with him. So I went out, found the deal because I got to watch what he liked, what he put together, and how the numbers worked. I was like, oh, I can go find a deal like that for him. Maybe I can do that and we can partner. And that's exactly what happened. So he brought me in as a minority 10% partner on a land development deal for 42 townhomes. And we did that project. I left in 2018, wrote a book on how to lease commercial real estate, started my own firms, raised a bunch of money, bought $60 million worth of assets, started a YouTube channel, and we're here. That's it.
Boom. Podcast
Boom.
over. Done.
Done. We'll see you guys later.
Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, one, that's just freaking awesome. And two, you know, the fact that you got into this space and because like you said, right now there's so much more access to information. There's, you know, so many people that are willing to mentor you, or that there actually is great content out there like yours and your YouTube channel that teaches people how to do this stuff. Talk about that early mindset of how you were able to kind of get over some of those initial hurdles and milestones, being that commercial real estate doesn't move as fast as single family. And a lot of people are always antsy to get that traction in something. Like, what was your mindset during that time? And how did you make that work on your way to that first milestone of success?
Man, I just wanted to learn anything that I could to make more money, right? Like at the time, you know, I first got into it, I was like, oh, well, based on commissions and how much I was making selling knives, like if I'm selling buildings, I'm going to make $100,000 my first year. This will be easy. Well, newsflash, that doesn't happen in commercial real estate brokerage. It takes you 3 years. Oh, I wish, man. Yeah, it takes you 3 years before you really get the industry under your belt enough to make six figures. Now, are there exceptions? Of course. I unfortunately was not one of them. So, man, I mean, it was really the fact that I was lucky enough to be working with a developer that was also doing residential, which meant that I was exposed to some really outstanding residential real estate agents that wanted his business. And so I got to see how they operated on a daily basis, which is a completely different silo from commercial real estate, right? Yeah. They don't cross paths. They, you know, some residential agents try to do commercial. Commercial will not touch residential. Commercial doesn't like residential. The residential agents don't understand why commercial won't call them back. It's this whole drop. You know, I mean, you could have a Lifetime TV show on how these guys interact, man. And so I got to see how they marketed and compare that to commercial agents. I was like, man, these commercial guys are all stuck in the 1980s. Like literally just sitting in their offices, making cold calls, taking people out for martinis at lunch and golfing all day. I'm not that guy. I'm not going to do that. So that's what led us to, you know, doing videos on social media, starting an Instagram account back in like 2016, which, you know, was before Instagram was really cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of led me down this path because, man, residential has so much more competition in it. Yeah. That you have to be the absolute cream of the crop at marketing for anybody to see your message. And so I looked at that and I said, well, yeah, I mean, look, I'm one guy, small guy. I'll never be able to compete against the national guys, but all I have to do is be better at being found than them. And so that's what we started building.
That's amazing. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about your social media brand and the strategies that are working and what that's led to. For those that are trying to break into commercial, talk a little bit about the mindset in the beginning and the habits in the beginning. If you were to go back knowing what you know now, you know, what would be some of the habits and the daily activities and some of the routines and disciplines that people should, you know, be focusing on? Eliminate all the other distractions, focus on some of these things, do them over and over and over again, and maybe talk about how long they need to have, you know, their mind wrapped around doing those things so they don't give up before they actually start to get some real traction in these spaces.
Yeah, I mean, lean in close because I'm going to give you the secret. Commercial real estate is the exact same process as residential.
Really?
Just about. I mean, there's like a couple of, you know, items that are a little bit different, but here's what I see. I mean, I have coached hundreds of people transitioning from residential to commercial real estate. And the biggest block, and it's something that people don't even think about. So when you first start thinking, like not even thinking about investing in residential real estate, what do? You start reading books. You start listening to podcasts. You start watching YouTube channels. You start talking to your friends that invest in residential real estate. For whatever reason, and maybe it's because people are already in what they feel is the real estate industry. They're like, oh, I've already learned everything. Maybe it just doesn't cross their minds. You've got to start all over. Commercial real estate's a totally different beast.
Yeah.
Go seek out the podcasts, seek out the books, the YouTube channels, the people that are doing it, and learn as much as you can from them, because that's how you get started, right? And I talk to people all the time. It's always just this, I don't know what I need to know. Like I don't even have a basic level of education on how commercial real estate works, and it's all out there. And it's ready for you to find. Now, here's the thing. It takes, like, my average student closes their first commercial real estate deal in 9 months. 9 months. That is not a short amount of time, right? I mean, a lot of you residential investors are sitting there going, man, 9 months, I could close a residential deal in 30 days. Well, there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of due diligence that you have to do on commercial properties.
Yeah.
There are things that you got to take into account that you don't necessarily get in residential. And also, man, lending is a nightmare. But the biggest thing is really finding the right deal and doing the proper due diligence on these, because it is pretty straightforward when you're buying a house, right? You know, if you're buying a house, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house is going to comp out with every other 3-bedroom, 2-bath house in the neighborhood, probably within a 1 to 3, 5 mile radius. However, an office building next door to an office building, identical, 20,000 square feet each, could have two drastically different valuations. They could be built the same year, same size, same parking lots. Literally everything's the same. One could have a lease that's better. The other one could have an okay lease. One building could be worth 2 times the other one. That's just how commercial real estate works, because it's treated more as an investment. So that's important to keep in mind.
Absolutely. So talk about your first big win in commercial and how long it took you to get there. And ultimately, you know, you obviously had this mindset of brokerage and being, you know, kind of the technician. What was it that allowed you to shift that mindset of going, I need to be on the other side and start building some wealth as an investor?
Yeah. So 2 different stories come to mind. I mean, one, the way that I fell into buying commercial properties was a complete accident. I had been brokering deals for 5 years, still didn't have the confidence, right? Like, I'm the dude I'm like looking at these deals going, this is a great deal. Mr. Jones, you should buy this and make way more money than I ever will as a broker. You know, like it's kind of funny. You just get into that mindset, but you don't think about it because you don't know, like, oh, I don't know how to pull the lending together. I don't know how to do this. I had a client that was under contract on a $575,000 2-tenant building that was totally vacant, but it had been renovated and it was on a corner. It was really nice. And he couldn't get his financing together. So of course he was like, hey, I'm going to drop it. We got to walk away. Dude, there's a 3% commission on the line, like $18,000, $19,000. Not a chance am I letting this go anywhere. So I'm like, hold on to it. Give me 1 week, right? Because your earnest money doesn't go hard for another week. We're going to be okay. Let me make a couple of calls. Ended up finding another investor who was like, hell yeah, I would love to buy that building. Let's go. So we assigned him the contract. I'm not even kidding you. 30 days later, dude says, I can't get my financing together. I'm going to have to drop it. Well, at this point, I've been working on the project for 60 days. I'm like, this is a no brainer of a deal. They were buying it for like $73 or $83 a foot. It was something super low to where like you couldn't even buy the building for that, let alone on a corner with all this infrastructure.
Yep.
So I just said, you know what? Assign it to me. I'll figure it out. And this was back in 2019. And I made 2 phone calls. I was very lucky on my first deal. One to a developer that I had known for a long time, and one to a doctor that I had known for a long time. I said, look, here's my plan. I didn't have any formal underwriting, man. It was pretty brutal compared to what we do today. It was literally back of napkin stuff. I said, hey, here's the plan. I need $50,000 from you. I'm going to roll in my commissions as equity in the deal. I'm going to take an extra 10% just for finding the deal and putting it together. Here's what we're going to do. And they both said, cool, we trust you. I mean, I had known them for so long. I had never had an ask of either of them. They both said yes. And we did it. So that's how I got into my first project. But man, the story that really took it off was in 2020. I had bought 4 buildings in 2019. I had a decent sized portfolio. And I was feeling, a little overzealous for whatever reason. I was just itching to go out and do something. So I found this off-market shopping center It was 330,000 square feet, 34 tenants on 32 acres, fully entitled for 2.1 million square feet of redevelopment. And I had no business even looking at this deal. But it turns out I knew one of the sellers. I played football with him back in high school. His dad had bought the property back in the 90s. And so he had inherited it. And I called him. I was like, "Hey man, what do you guys want for this?" Because there had been a broker that was marketing it a couple of months before. It was no longer on market. They had it listed for 34 million. And I called him. I was like, "Dude, it's not going to go for 34 million. What do you guys realistically want?" He was like, probably 20, 22 million. And I said, "I'll get you an offer tomorrow for 17." And we ended up negotiating for 18 million. I had to borrow the 1% earnest money because I didn't even have $180,000 to be working on this deal. Again, like I said, no business at all, even talking to these guys about doing this deal. I just knew that by looking at it, I was like, man, we're buying this for $13 a square foot. To put that in perspective for the dirt, to put that in perspective, 3 miles down the road, it was $35 a foot for that same zoning. So I was like, man, I can't be missing this.
Yeah.
So that was in August of 2020. We closed April of 21. And man, the leases were a mess. Everything was a mess. I got on the phones immediately, started calling every single capital partner I could get my hands on. I was like, look, I'll take a minority position in this deal. I know, I'm not going to be the guy, but I have something here and we need to figure it out. And so, man, there were a lot of ups and downs. Talk about an emotional roller coaster on that project. I mean, it literally came down to, I thought that we were going to lose all of our money on December 31st, New Year's Eve, because I hadn't finalized the deal with my capital partners yet. And we were literally making calls at 10 and 11 p.m. that night to get it across the line. Finally got it signed, got it figured out, and closed in April. And it was hands down the greatest deal I've ever done. And that's what gave me the confidence of or not the confidence, but the reassurance that my confidence was right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just believing in yourself.
100%. It's crazy how we always used to joke around, and still do, honestly, because it's affirmed to me on every single deal that every deal is an ordeal. And it's like nothing ever goes smooth. And especially the best deals, man, those are the ones that have so many peaks and valleys going through those, the process of getting those across the finish line. And it really is one of those things where you kind of just have to trust in the process and put your best foot forward every step of the way. And like you said, you show it and expose it to more people, you're either validated that, oh, there's something here. And it's kind of like this Rubik's Cube that you have to figure out how to solve, right? It's there, you can get it there. It's just figuring out how to get all those, puzzle pieces put together. Or as you go deeper down the process, right, you're kind of unvalidated that, hey, this is not the right opportunity. You got to cut bait on this one. And it sounds like on this one, right, it was just one of those deals that was too good to be true. It ultimately ended up coming true for you. And when there is real opportunity there, money always finds its way to the deal, right? And I think that's where I see a lot of like early stage investors in this space. They are constantly thinking about step 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, when really they just need to focus on steps 1, 2, and 3. And all of the other steps behind it get so much easier when you start getting those first few dominoes to fall. But most people just get stuck by thinking about everything else that has to get done before they even master the first couple stages, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And, it was one of those moments where like I knew going into it that I knew how to do this.
Yeah.
Right. I knew how to underwrite. I knew how to look at these deals and figure out what the vision was. I mean, the project, by the time it's all said and done, we're just master developing it. We'll exit somewhere between 60 and 80 million. We bought it for 18, right? Like we're putting a little bit of elbow grease into it. But, sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like there was a moment where I almost lost $400,000 that I didn't have. Right. So I don't necessarily, recommend that to every single person out there. But also, I'm a big believer that if I'm going to bet on anyone, I'm going to bet on myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm the best person to do it.
100%. And it's so, For me personally, over the years, whether it's been on my own deals or, hearing a deal like this or hearing, other, mentors and friends in their own deals, there's such a fine line between success and failure.
Oh yeah.
But usually the times that it's, the success that we end up reading about, it's because somebody took a leap of faith. They put every ounce of energy and effort into making sure that they were leaving it all out on the floor, no stone left unturned. I can live with where the chips fall, but I'm going to bet on myself. And it's, I would much rather fail doing that than fail betting on somebody else to make me successful. And that's why I
That's
love
right.
commercial real estate.
Yeah, it's so much fun, man. I mean, at the end of the day, you're in control of your own destiny, right? I can go out and do whatever I want tomorrow, and that's what I love about this business.
So let's talk a little bit about strategy. I mean, for those that don't understand commercial real estate, there's a variety of different asset classes, a variety of different strategies. What are some of your favorite asset classes, favorite investment strategies? What's kind of your fastball?
Yeah, so I'm a bit of a unicorn or a weirdo, you could say, when it comes to commercial real estate, right? Like we're about to break ground on a renovation of a boutique hotel right down the street from me, 48 keys. I also have a 1.5 million square foot portfolio of industrial real estate. I've got close to 100 retail tenants across my retail portfolio. So, I mean, we've got a very eclectic, and I've got a couple of office buildings. I'm in a 28,000 square foot office building right now that I bought in 2019. Everybody thinks it's doing terrible. We're 100% occupied. So
That's awesome.
don't listen to the headlines. So yeah, I mean, we do a little bit of everything. I'm about to do a single family custom home. I'm really an opportunist when it comes to this business. The biggest thing for me is, what's the story? Like, is this something that's going to be fun? Is it going to have an impact? Like a project that I did was a 6-bay car wash that we converted into 5 micro restaurants and a bar. And when we first started working on that project, these are 380 square foot suites. We started thinking like, oh, we could go out and grab all those big Nashville brands that, don't have a presence in East Nashville and bring them over here. But the more that I thought about it, I was like, man, we've inherently created an affordable opportunity for small businesses. So let's only give this opportunity to small businesses. And because of that, we've got 6 businesses. I mean, technically the 6th is a small business, but it's my bar. So I'm not really counting myself. The restaurants, all 5 restaurants are either a person of color owned or woman owned, which is really cool. Not really something that I was intentional about. I wish I could like take full credit and be like, yeah, I was very purposeful. I wasn't, but looking back on it, what I realized was when given the opportunity, they stepped up and took it, which I thought was really, really cool. And so we've got, I mean, dude, it's some of the best food you've ever had. So if you ever come to Nashville, go to the Wash. That we've got all sorts of amazing restaurants there.
Yeah. So you're deal agnostic. You're more like you said, right? You focus on the opportunity, and talk a little bit about that real quick, because I think this is important for people to understand. No matter the asset class, a lot of the mechanics and kind of the X's and O's of how you run the plays of creating the value and the upside in commercial real estate, it's very similar across all asset classes right now, with some tweaks and some, unique aspects based on what that asset class might be. But I think a lot of people think like, oh, I got to learn all of the, the playbook for multifamily. I got to learn all the playbook for hotels, all the playbook for office versus industrial versus mobile home parks. Talk a little bit about the overlap and how the mechanics of a lot of these things work, and why you're an opportunist instead of just staying focused in one particular asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, don't get me wrong. When you're first getting started, be the specialist, right? Because, as you'll come to learn, 80% of what you're doing in commercial real estate is the exact same across every asset class. The process is almost exactly the same, right? So we focus more on neighborhoods, right? Like I love East Nashville. I got to know this neighborhood super well, which is part of the reason as to why we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
Because I know what needs to be delivered here. I spend the overwhelming majority of my time here. And the other thing that you get as a real estate investor is every project you do has a positive impact on your own projects. So like why, I always think about this. Why should anybody else benefit from my deals being awesome other than me? I'm going to go buy up as much in this neighborhood as I possibly can,
Yeah,
because I'm going to make sure everything's cool.
Yeah.
So it's going to make everything worth more. People are going to want to live here. They're going to spend more time here, which means if I own the building down the street, that one's also going to go up in value. So it's just a different kind of investment strategy. Um, I mean, whenever we're going into another part of the world, right? So we expanded into Chattanooga back in 2021. It took me 2 years to study that market and feel comfortable enough making a decision to make that move.
Yeah.
Because, while I may not necessarily specialize in an asset class, I specialize in the neighborhood. So I understand my target demographic really well. But look, at the end of the day, the flexibility that you get out of utilizing the strategy that I use compared to what other guys do, man, if I was an office guy or if I was a multifamily guy, there wouldn't be a whole lot of deals going on right now. It'd be a bit of a painful world, right? I mean, these multifamily developers are bleeding out of their ears right now with how brutal it is out on the streets when it comes to all these apartment deliveries and nobody's leasing them. Whereas I can say, okay, cool, multifamily doesn't work today. Let's go to industrial. Flex sounds awesome. Oh, flex doesn't work today. All right, let's go to office. Office doesn't work. Cool, we're going back to retail. So, I mean, it gives us the flexibility to look at any number of deals that come across our desk and decide what's ultimately the best out of all of those instead of just finding the best industrial deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, right? I mean, a lot of the mechanics behind those deals are very similar in terms of how you create value, stabilize income, stabilize value, right? And so you mentioned a couple key things that I think are, daunting for a lot of people, which is due diligence and running numbers and demographics and market data. Maybe give a high level overview of, what are some of the things that individuals should be thinking about, looking at if and when they're looking at a particular market or asset class, when they're going through their due diligence to determine if it's something that, could be a safe and a probable investment that they want to move forward on.
Yeah. So first thing, when it comes to commercial real estate, this is kind of going to be a bit of a mind shift for you, but you're not buying the property. You're buying the lease, right? If you're buying it at an 8% cap rate, you want to make sure that the property is coming with a lease that is actually a good enough lease to continue providing you with an 8% cap rate. So again, I know that's kind of funny, a funny way to think about it, but look, if I'm spending, $5 million to buy a Walgreens at a 5.25% cap rate, I will have wasted 80% of my money if Walgreens moves out the day after I close.
Yeah.
Because now I have zero cash flow. I have negative revenue because I'm now having to pay my debt service. And yeah, the property has some inherent value, sure, but I was buying the cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing that you really want to pay attention to. Whenever you're looking at these buildings, look at the replacement costs. If you can buy it for below replacement cost, cool. You're typically not going to be able to necessarily hit replacement costs on like a triple net lease deal, right? If you're buying something that is stabilized, they're saying, hey, it's going to give you a 7% return every year, 7% cap rate, considering if you pay all cash, then you're probably not going to be paying below replacement costs. You might, but it depends on the type of deal. I always like to look at that number and say, okay, if it costs me $150 a foot to build this today, and I'm paying $165 a foot for it today, cash flowing, is that $15 delta worth the cap rate that I'm paying?
Right.
Typically it is, but you also got to think like if that tenant leaves, this is probably worth $150 or probably less. So it's just something to keep in mind. As you're going through the process, make sure that you build a team. Commercial real estate is a team sport. Residential real estate, yeah, you can do that by yourself. That's totally fine. That's why you get a lot of these DIYers, people, house flippers, right? They go out, they find their own house, they buy it, they do all the renovations themselves, they flip it, they move on to the next one. Can you do that in commercial? Yeah, maybe. I don't know anybody that does and does it successfully.
Yeah.
You really want to have a good team. So find a great commercial real estate broker and lean on them for all of the market data you will ever need, because that is an overwhelming thing as a new commercial real estate investor is how do I even find what the rental rates are or what the sales comps are, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Commercial brokers will give it to you. Find a great commercial lender. Note that I'm saying commercial on all these. A good commercial contractor, a commercial real estate attorney. Build out that team. And of course, a commercial property manager. You want them all to be commercial real estate specific. It's very tempting as a residential real estate investor to bring your team along with you as you transition into residential. And while you may love that contractor and he may have done a phenomenal job for you when you were doing houses, residential and commercial grade finishes are entirely different. The permitting process is very different. Codes are very different. And it's going to be a nightmare if you try and turn a residential contractor into a commercial one. So you want to make sure that you're doing all of that properly.
Yeah. When I see every once in a while come across a deal that is represented by a traditional single family agent, I'm not going to lie.
Oh,
I do get excited when I see a residential agent representing a commercial sale, because I mean, it's like you're speaking two different languages to them and they have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
oh man, it's funny because I kind of salivate over those opportunities, right? Because I know like, oh man, we're going to walk all over this. We're going to like, these negotiations are ours. We've got this in the box, because they don't know what to negotiate. And the funny thing is, I've had, you can always tell when somebody has no idea what they're doing when they come to you and they try and negotiate the triple net expenses. Like, these are this is the additional rent. These are the common area maintenance, the property taxes, and the building insurance. If you want to go and renegotiate my property taxes, you are more than welcome to. I would actually appreciate that. But that's not, you can't negotiate with me on that. It is what it is.
Dude, it's so funny. Now, when you talked about some demographics, right? There's certain things that we like to look at to determine the strength of a market, an area, an industry. What are some of the demographics that investors should be looking at when it comes to getting a feel for their market? And obviously, like you said, right, you can get all this data from CoStar, Crexi, all the different, brokers out there can get you all this data, but what data should they be asking for?
Yeah. So it is going to be so hyper specific depending on what type of commercial real estate you're doing, right? I mean, if you are buying a franchisee leased Taco Bell, you're not necessarily going to care about the local household income being 70,000 or above, right? Yeah. You're going to care more about traffic counts and what were last year's sales and how did the sales of this store compare to the Taco Bell average, right? If you're looking at an industrial property, you're not necessarily going to care about how many households are within the immediate area. You're going to be wondering, how close is this to an interstate? And then how close is that interstate to all of the households within the area? Right. So there's very different demographic sets that you're going to need to dive into depending on specifically what type of commercial real estate you're going after. Office, right? It's got to be convenient. It's got to be centralized location. Yep. Retail, can you get the drive-by traffic? Is it in an area? Is it near a neighborhood? Is there a draw for whatever reason? That's actually why a lot of retailers like to crowd together. Some people think it's so funny. Why do all the fast food restaurants go right next to each other on the same interstate exit? Well, it's because that family of five that's traveling can get off at that interstate exit. Dad and mom can get McDonald's. The kids can get KFC or, whatever it is, Chick-fil-A, right. Whatever it is, right? Everybody can kind of get their own options. So, yeah. I mean, that's super high level, I know, but there's so much you could dive into with demographics.
But yeah, you mentioned, you touched on, some of them, right? And population, you've got median household income, crime rates, you've got obviously traffic counts, depending on the asset class. Those are, things that you'll want to know. And your broker should be able to guide you on some of that important data. Now, I know for both you and I, we have had a lot of great success based on relationships. Talk about how important, not just for your team, but talk about relationships in terms of raising capital, finding partners for deals, being able to accelerate, getting to, key milestones in your career and on deals that, maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise. How have relationships played a role in your journey? And what do you subscribe to when it comes to how you show up and maintain and cultivate and, grow those relationships?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you didn't ask me to do this, but I mean, plug for your mastermind, right? Masterminds are one of the best things that you could ever do and ever join, hands down. Matty and I are having this conversation right now because we met at a mastermind back in 2017.
Yep.
Dude, it's been 7 years since we first met each other. We actually have not hung out in person since, but we've talked on the phone a handful of times.
Yep.
I mean, that's how impactful a single mastermind can be. I think that those are huge for building relationships. I mean, when I got into that mastermind and I learned how to syndicate, how to raise capital, how to hire and manage a team. I mean, so much that I could not have learned from just coffee conversations in Nashville,
Yeah.
right? Like you go to these weekend intensive programs where everybody is there and some people are at levels like that are stratospheres above you. And you're like, dude, how did you get to that? How did you get to that level? Like we're sitting in a room with David Osborne, dude's worth over $100 million. And I'm like getting to just hang out with him on a couch by ourselves. Like I'm talking to the dude, right? Like you could not reach out to somebody that's worth over $100 million and be like, hey man, can I just grab your time to pick your ear or to pick your brain? Like they don't have the time to do that, but they also make time to go to events like this. Like last Thursday, we threw an event with over 250 commercial real estate investors here in town. We were very intentional about the people that were there so that we could craft intense relationships, right? The number of debt and equity guys, the number of deal sponsors, the number of brokers. We were very intentional about that so that everybody would come away with it with like 3 to 5 just awesome relationships that they want to cultivate moving forward. Biggest thing is, hanging out, right? Like we get so used to working all the time, especially as entrepreneurs. I mean, man, I could work all day, every day and never talk to anybody, but being intentional about turning it off and not doing real estate, right? Like that is actually some of the most recharging time I've ever had. So like, got a buddy's birthday. We're going to go hang out for that, right? I'm taking time off next week for a week to take my family to the beach. Taking my mom and her husband. I'm taking my grandparents. I'm taking my great uncle and his wife. My girlfriend and her family are all going.
That's going to be awesome.
And yeah, you know what's funny is that actually goes back to masterminds. I wouldn't have done that if my GoPod, which is the group that we're in, GoBundits, if my GoPod hadn't said, dude, why don't you just pull the trigger and do that and stop talking about how awesome it would be? I was like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. It's literally that day I booked the house. This was back in like September. And so we're finally going. Really cool. So I think it's just putting yourself in places where you are going to be around the people that you want to be.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing you could do.
I mean, you said it. That if that one sentence period was what most people hear, I mean, the people that I see have the not only the best success long term, but also accelerated success a little bit faster without cutting corners. It's because they're paying to be in rooms with people that are just a little bit further ahead than them. But they know that by making that investment, right, and just being in proximity through osmosis, you just grow into those conversations, you grow into those rooms, those environments that you put yourself in. And it's crazy to me how many people talk themselves out of it, right? Like it's a $20,000 investment, a $50,000 investment, whatever it is, and they talk themselves out of it. And then they try and do it by themselves and they hit all these roadblocks and then they get so frustrated and like, this isn't for me when, just by being in those rooms, man, it's made all the difference for me. It hasn't kept me from having sleepless nights or having stress or falling on my face. It's just allowed me to navigate when I'm going through those seasons a whole lot better, a whole lot faster, and get into the outcomes that I really am desiring to get to. So I love that you brought that up. Now, partnerships have also been a key part of your journey, right? And putting the right puzzle pieces and partners and capital and relationships together. What do you say to that, early stage investor that's gone, I don't got that 1% EMD like you were talking about, Tyler. Yeah. How do I go and get my first deal and put something together? What do you say to those individuals and what mindset should they have when it comes to maybe structuring a partnership on an opportunity that really is a great deal? They just don't have the money to get it across the finish line.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And before we dive into it, I want to touch real quick on something you just said. Like these masterminds, 10, 20, 40, 50,000, $100,000 plus, that's not a crazy number, right? No. Like there are events that are out there that are $100,000 and they're worth it. Like that's the mind shift that a lot of people have to have because it's so unbelievable for them to realize like, yeah, I mean, dude, I could have paid $100,000 to go to that GoBundance event back in 2017. And, I would have had to take out so many loans to do it because that was before I had even started my own company. But to this day, the amount of deals and successes that I've had in my life that I can literally trace back
Same.
to that 3-day event in Whistler, Canada is kind of wild.
It's
like,
crazy.
It's kind of unbelievable. Like if I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, man, that was the best ROI I think I've ever had on anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And but also get creative with it. You don't have 40 grand, but get creative with it. I'm actually talking to a mastermind right now. It's like, hey, how about this? What you've got this, this group has this insane reach of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. So it's like, look, I don't sell my course anymore. What if I gave it to you guys? You could price it at whatever you want. Let's go raise 6 figures for your charity. You could sell it to your members for whatever you want. 100% of the proceeds goes to a charity of your choice. And I just get a membership to join the mastermind. And they're like, cool, let's talk about it. Right? Like you can do cool, creative things like that. I mean, dude, come on. So you're going to tell them I'm going to help you raise 6 figures for charity. Of course, they're going to be like, hell yeah, let's get you in here and talk about what this might look like. You know? So I mean, find some sort of way you could add value like that. And it might be worth it.
Yeah. Well, and two, I think what I always tell people is if you find the opportunity, you have the golden nugget in your hand that other people who don't want to go out and dig in the trenches and mine all day long to find that golden nugget, they've got money. They don't have time.
That's
but
right.
They've got money, right? So if you find that, you really have the leverage in your hand, and there is a way to create a win-win when you're open to all the different solutions of or outcomes of how that can look, right? So I love that you brought that up because I just think it's so important of people immediately go, well, if I can't do it by myself, then there's just obviously no way I can do this. And that's just not the mindset to have. I always think it's better to own a sliver of a watermelon than it is 100% of a raisin or 100% of nothing. So if you can go out and find that watermelon and say, hey, I just want a little sliver here, you can have the rest of it, right? And then you get that experience and you get to tap into their network, you get to tap into their resources, and then you get one across the finish line. Now your resume looks a little bit different. Now you've got experience. Now you've got a little bit of confidence that you can go out and do this, right? And then it's just, okay, how do I go find another one of these things?
Yeah. That's exactly it. I mean, you teed it up so perfectly for the partnership side of thing. It's like, look, they don't have the time, right? If you can find a deal, you are bringing 50% of the value to the table. Now, what I will say is that doesn't mean that you deserve 50% of the equity.
Agreed.
That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see all the time is people think, oh, I found the deal. That's half the work. It's really not, right? It is very valuable, but look, the first deal that I ever did, I found it. I ran the numbers to make sure that it worked, put a pitch together, and pitched my development firm on it. And they said, all right, sounds like a pretty good deal. I said, cool. I want 20%. I'm going to put no money into it, and I'm not signing on the debt. And they were like, not a chance. I was like, okay.
It's worth a try, though, right?
It's worth a try.
All they can say is no.
I didn't know any better. I was like, okay, what is reasonable? And they were like, we'll give you 10%, but we will put in all the money and we will sign in the debt. I was like, okay, that's a great deal. Yeah. They said, the only thing you have to do is run the damn project for 2 years. So I said, deal. 100%.
Yep.
Looking back on it now, I mean, of course, I knew that was a great deal at the time. Looking back on it now, damn, is that a good deal? I would do that deal time and time again. I mean, I'm not, I'm 31, right? So by the time I'm 45, I probably won't want to be the guy that's actually running the deals. I want to be the guy that says, hey, you go run the deal for 24 months.
Right.
Right. But today I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? I don't have to put any money into it. I don't have to sign on the debt and take on all this risk. I just have to go out and run the project and I get 10%. Dude, sign me up. Let's go. I would do that today. If anybody listening has a deal like that, call me. Like, come on, Matty and I would love to partner with you.
That's what I'm saying, right? I mean, you got people like Tyler, myself. There's so many other people probably in your network that would do that type of deal. Just go out and find the opportunity and the money will come to it. The right people will come to it, but you got to find that great deal first, right? I want to shift over in terms of finding deals. And I know obviously there's, we can quickly go over, brokers and direct mail and text messaging and events and networking and all that kind of stuff. But you really cracked the code on social media. And I would love to understand a little bit more around, why did you lean in on this space and what was your strategy and your thought, pattern behind how you were going to approach creating content in commercial real estate, and what has it yielded for you?
Yeah. So I realized that residential agents, of course, better marketers, right? Well, they were all jumping onto Instagram and talking about real estate. And I didn't see anybody doing commercial real estate in that way. But there was one thing that I didn't like that a lot of residential agents did. And that was sell, 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 sell on every single post, right? It's always open house this Sunday, new listing, buy this from me. Are you a buyer? Work with me. It was just like, who's going to follow that to be sold all the time? But then there were a couple of creators that I was like, oh, cool. I get to see a house tour. Wow, look at this house being built. That's pretty interesting. Oh, they just finalized their subdivision plan. So I started looking at that. I was like, okay, that's the content that I'm actually resonating with. I could easily do that in commercial real estate. So I started an Instagram account where I just started showing the behind the scenes of day-to-day life in commercial real estate. And man, we grew that account so fast. This is before the algorithm changes in Instagram. So I went from like 2,000 to 10,000 followers in like a year by just being intentional, talking about the behind the scenes stuff, right? Because everybody has that. Yep. There's this building that everybody drives past every day on Main Street in your town. And they wonder, what the hell is going on with that building? It's been vacant for 10 years. Why don't you be the person that goes out there and tells them, hey, by the way, this just went to a zoning hearing and this is what the developers are planning on doing. People love that kind of stuff.
Yeah, they do.
So it's definitely the long game, right? But if you create quality content, you'll pick up a lot of followers. And so what I did was I actually posted on my Instagram story, this is back in 2020, that I was driving from Nashville to Atlanta and I'd be stopping in Chattanooga and I wanted to look at deals. One of my followers screenshotted that, texted it to his buddy in Chattanooga, who then called me and said, hey, I've got 3 buildings for you to tour when you get to Chattanooga. Let's grab lunch. So I said, hell yeah. We grabbed lunch, looked at 3 different buildings and ended up making an offer and buying one. We went under contract a week later, bought it for 1.8 million, flipped it 18 months later for 4.6. So that is the power of social media. I was told by my mentor when I first got started, my boss at the time, that I would never be able to buy and sell commercial real estate online. That's just not how the industry worked. And I beg to differ. We made some money off of that one.
Boy, is he eating crow on that, man. It is so funny though, right? When you think about, there's so many industries in our country in general that are just long in the tooth and they're just way outdated. And for guys like us who are totally open to going, I'm going to skate to where the puck is at, where the puck is going. And I see there being an opportunity there. It was the same thing I did on my social media stuff. And that's how I found my first hotel. My first hotel was brought to me by a pastor of a church who had been following my house flipping content. And he goes, hey, somebody in my congregation bought this for the church. The church isn't using it. This place is getting run into the ground. Would you be interested in a hotel in Lake Tahoe? And I'm like, sure, why not? And that led to me buying my first hotel, which obviously my second, my third came right behind that. I would have never gotten into that space, into hospitality, if it wasn't for my social media content. And I think, what I continue to say, and I know you feel this same way, because I've followed your, because there's really not a lot of good commercial real estate content on YouTube and, just online in general, and seeing your YouTube channel just blow up and grow to the extent that it has today has really created so many different ancillary opportunities outside of just, your real estate brokerage business or your investing business. Now you've got an education business, an arm. You've got all these other cool things that have come off of just giving value on social media. And it's like a way of, I just say, especially for cool people, for, ethical people with high integrity that are doing great things, people want a window into what you're doing. They want to know what you're doing, who you're talking to, what projects you're working on. And if you can give them that window through social media, you have no idea who you're reaching or when that next opportunity that's going to change your life is going to come get plopped right in your lap. And that's an example, right? My hotel is an example. There's other deals that I know. We have friends that have gotten insane opportunities through social media. So it's just one of
Yeah.
those things where you just can't overlook it anymore.
Yeah, I've got a buddy that had a billionaire reach out to him because of a news story that was run on his business here just outside of Nashville. You never know what that content is going to create. So just get out there and do it. Like just document the journey. It didn't have to be anything fancy. Like if you see, like if you go into my YouTube channel, you'll see like that's highly produced now. If you go to my TikTok, it's literally me on my phone, just like responding to stuff. Like it doesn't matter. Just do it.
Yep. You never know. So as we wrap up, brother, I want to just get your quick perspective on today. What are you seeing in the market? What headwinds are we facing? Where are the opportunities in this? And ultimately, what are you seeing in the next 6 to 12 months? And how are you navigating that economic cycle that you think we're in?
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thing. There are commercial real estate deals in every market. There's always somebody that's going to have to sell, whether their loan is coming due or there's been a death in the family or they hate their partner or they're no longer running their business. They're moving out of the country. Like there's so many reasons people are always selling. So look, I mean, down markets are actually the best time to buy. I mean, it's funny. A lot of people that are not in commercial real estate have been telling me for like the past 5 years, like, oh my gosh, you're in Nashville, you're in commercial real estate. You guys must be just crushing it right now. That market's crazy. I'm like, yeah, well, it's definitely crazy. I mean, yeah, we're crushing. We're having some of our best years ever, but at the same time, you're dealing with people that are willing to get lower returns that just need to get into the industry. Like, I mean, look at what happened. Here's the story that I sum it up with. My uncle, he's married to a doctor. And so every now and then they'll have some of her friends over for dinner. And one of the doctors knows that my uncle invests in real estate. And this was, last year, 2 years ago. And he said to my uncle, he's like, hey man, I saw what you were doing in real estate and I just bought my first house. And my uncle was like, oh great. Where is it? It's down the street from one of my uncle's properties. He's like, that's awesome. How much are you making on it a month? He's like, oh, I'm paying $100 a month for it. But that's it. All I have to do is pay $100 a month and I get this whole house. And real estate investors hear that and we're like, what are you doing? That is not an investment. You are losing money. I mean, yeah, sure. It is an investment, of course. Right. But you're supposed to be going for cash flow.
Yeah.
Dude doesn't care about cash flow because he makes so much money as a doctor. He just wants the asset.
Yep.
And so that's who you start to compete against in hot markets. I love down markets. I think that just get out there. You might have to underwrite or look at twice as many deals as before. The opportunities are out there. In my own personal world, I would love to see the banking industry fall apart and become completely rebuilt. I think that, look, this is a personal thing, but the majority of deals that I do are creative. They're out of the box. We're going for small businesses, lower credit. Lenders hate what I do because of that. Now, we've got some awesome lending partners, and obviously we wouldn't have acquired all the real estate that we have without that. But lenders are the most conservative people out there, and they are the reason that your neighborhood has a Dollar General instead of a really cool local restaurant. So something to think about.
Well, brother, I know so many people are going to want to check out your YouTube channel, courses, education, coaching, all the cool projects that you've got going on. Where is the best place for them to do that?
Yeah. So best thing, go to my Instagram at Commercial in Nashville. You can interact with me there if you want to. You want to check out the YouTube channel. That's just my name at Tyler Cauble. You want to learn more about my training platform, group coaching and community. Go to CREcentral.com.
We will be sure to link up all of that at millionaiремindcast.com on Tyler's episode. As always, brother, it's great chopping it up with you. I love seeing all the success you're having. Love all the opportunities to collaborate, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yeah, likewise, Matty. Thanks for having me on, man. Let's catch up again soon.